Great, JB. Hello.
Yo, what's up, Pete? Hey, Elliot.
Awesome. Hello. Okay, we're here for a fireside chat with John Barrows. Before we dive in, do you want to wait for some folks to trickle in? So I want to start us off with a quick icebreaker. In the spirit of Halloween, it's going to be Halloween questions all week long. Have to ask, what is your guys' go-to Halloween movie? Pete, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I have a 5-year-old, so I think my go-to Halloween movie is now like The Great Pumpkin, which like we were able
That
to
stole mine, man.
oh my bad.
Yeah.
Which like which now like it's not available on Netflix. Like I think we found it streaming on like some rando like site. I don't know, like maybe it's legal, who knows. And like now we've like watched it like 3 years in a row. So I think that's like kind of our that's our go-to right there. John, what's yours?
That was mine. But did you hear about what Amazon did to that? Amazon
No.
bought that. So Amazon bought the rights to the grape. So you won't see it this Halloween, by the way.
Oh,
You won't see the Great Pumpkin Patch. You won't see Thanksgiving peanuts because Amazon
really?
bought it and pissed everybody off. So now you actually have to watch it on Amazon. They're going to give it away for like 3 days for free on each one of those areas, but it's no
Oh.
longer going to be on TBS or whatever it is. So that's a
Oh,
bummer.
no
But
kidding. That's funny.
yeah, mine's I don't know. I'll probably go with like House of the Clock on the Walls with Jack Black. Again, that's kind of on my daughter's 12, so it's around that. And it's
Mm.
like scary but not, and it's kind of cool. So it's a good family one. That's a little bit scarier than a kid movie. So
Is
I
it, has
follow
your
my daughter.
has your daughter landed on what she wants to be for Halloween yet?
This year, yeah, she's going with her friends. She's gonna be like Mean Girls or something like that, which I hate. But she's going with a group of her friends from school. So I'm like, you better not actually be one of those Mean Girls, because if you guys are that clique at school, I'm gonna be really, really pissed.
Elliot, what's your go-to movie?
I feel like I'm on the same energy as your kids because I'm all about Scooby-Doo, Zombie Island.
There you go.
Yeah, absolute classic. Absolute
Nice.
That
classic.
sounds amazing, and it sounds like something that like I need to get my my son to watch. Probably not
Oh,
too scary.
no, that's not too bad, I think. I
All
remember. Okay, I do see that we have a few more people here, so want to get us started. We're here
right.
today for a fireside chat with John Barrows. Super excited about the amazing content and takeaways everyone's going to be getting out of this event. Today's event is brought to you by the team here at Modern Sales Pros. For those of you who are not familiar, Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own and help them see around corners that they may not know about. We do this through live sessions, an online forum, and our quarterly summits. If you're already not a part of MSP, you'll be invited to join after this event. Speaking of quarterly summits, we just held our 3-day RevX Fest.
It was
Pulled
so
together about,
fun. It was
oh yeah,
bananas. It was so awesome.
absolutely insane. We pulled together 24 events, amazing content and speakers. You'll be learning from the CEO of Gainsight, Outreach, HighSpot, and dozens of other speakers like them. Going to be dropping the link to those recordings in the chat, so be on the lookout for that. Give
Love
me
it.
1 second, guys.
Yeah,
Oh, looks
super.
like Hannah already covered it. Awesome. Okay. So do need to go over some quick housekeeping notes. First of all, this event is being recorded. You'll all be able to access this recording and the key takeaways on the previous events page of the MSP website. Second, if there's any questions for our panelists, please use the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to get to them during the event. On to the good stuff. Going to be
Oh
handing things
yeah.
over to you, Pete. Talk about Atrium, introduce yourself, and John. All you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, killer. Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Pete Kazanjy. I'm one of the founders of Atrium. For folks that may not be familiar, Atrium makes data-driven sales management software. It's software that helps sales managers, sales leaders, sales reps use metrics to improve performance. And one of the really cool things about Atrium is it's like super easy to set up. It takes 5 minutes to turn on a free account. With a read-only connection to your Salesforce CRM, and presto chango, you get a world-class analytics harness that tells you how your reps are performing across 100 plus metrics. Who's taking care of business, who's maybe struggling, and exactly why. So that's a little bit about Atrium, but I'm super pumped to have this fireside chat with you, John. Ever since I like got hipped to the fact that you wrote a kid's book on sales,
Yeah.
I've just been like super. I mean, obviously I've known you for years, but like somehow I missed that. And like my mom is she was a teacher, right? She was a kindergarten teacher, first grade teacher, and like a family literacy teacher. And so like I just like love kids books, and our whole house is just like covered, right? And so I'm stoked to talk about that, and like what you guys are spending your time on over at Sell Better, and just a variety of other topics that are kind of like top of mind for a lot of folks. John, maybe you can introduce yourself, not just like what you guys do at Sell Better, but also like what you worked on, what you spent your time on before that, kind of like what brought you to running your training company.
Yeah, so I appreciate it, and long time fan, first time caller type of thing. Modern MSP has always been something I've marveled at this community, so I appreciate you having me on here and what you built here. For me, I think my journey into sales is very similar to a lot of people's in a lot of ways, as far as you just kind of fall into it. I'm 46, so there was no degree in sales when I was at school.
Yeah.
I grew up here in Boston. But then I went down to Maryland, mainly because they didn't force me to declare my major, and I ended up going from like art to like my first major was art, my second major was engineering, terrible. My third major was biotech, right? Like so, I literally tried everything, and
A little
I was
bit of
terrible.
each.
Yeah,
Like,
I was terrible at
just
all of it.
sampling. It's like a buffet.
Yeah, and so I ended up marketing because it was probably the easiest one, and drank my way through 4 years of college, and then got out. And I got into when I was getting into marketing, I just didn't like a lot of the jobs and roles at the time, and so DeWalt recruited heavily out of Maryland and Black and Decker, because it's right next to it. So DeWalt, Black and Decker.
Yep.
And so it was this event marketing team, but it was under the auspice of sales. So I was like, all right, let me try that out. And it wasn't really sales; it was more like event marketing. So I had to go around, give away free tools to construction workers, which was pretty damn cool.
I was gonna say, like, that seems like a great way to make friends.
Oh, totally. And by the way, the only
here comes the badass DeWalt like drill fairy.
100%.
Here he comes again.
The only group that was cooler than us were the Red Bull crew. So like we thought we were badass because we were driving around these Dodge Ram pickup trucks, giving away free tools, and then we'd go out and to the clubs at night or whatever, and we're like thinking we're cool. But all of a sudden, the Red Bull crew would come up, and this was right when Red Bull was hot,
and everyone was like, they would like run away from your
they
table.
Were like, oh, those guys are way cooler. So, needless to say, I don't think I could have lived that lifestyle for very long though. But then I went to Xerox. That's where I got my real sales education, at Xerox. And I went through their 8-week sales training program. Ended up being, one of the top reps in the area for Xerox. Not because I loved copiers, just because Xerox at the time was one of the best copier companies in the business.
Yeah.
But didn't like the corporate structure. I always had this entrepreneurial itch in me. My parents were both entrepreneurs, even though they didn't call it entrepreneurs back then. My mom,
small business owners.
What's that?
Small business owners.
It was actually weird because my mom, so I'm 9 years older than my sister. I'm 9 years younger than my sister. Sorry. So when my sister was born, my mom stayed home with her, right? But then fast forward 9 years, my mom gets a job, and she gets a job at Wang Laboratories. And at the time, Wang was like Salesforce is now, right? Yeah. So if you worked at Wang, you were like, holy shit. And she wanted me to have the same experience as my sister did. So she ended up quitting her really, really high quality, high paying job and staying at home with me. But she started a consultancy in our house. Oh. So she did, she helped people get jobs and, career counseling and stuff. So I always, when I would come home, her office, like our living room, her office was on one side and the TV was on the other. So I was always around that. My dad, same thing. He was a contractor for the FAA. And so long story short, I didn't like the corporate structure. I joined a company that my friend started called Thrive Networks. We were outsourced IT services. I had no idea what I was doing. I was 23. So I took all the training, Sandler, Miller Heiman, Taz, Spin, you name it. And I came across this one group, Basho, that I loved because it was this really tactical training. Used Basho, help us grow. We were the fastest growing company in Massachusetts for a few years in a row. Got us to about 12 million in revenue and about 85 employees, and then sold to Staples. Staples bought us.
Wow.
Spent about a year going through that integration, and come to find out, apparently I'm not a corporate guy. I don't have much of a filter, and I really don't like playing politics. So after a little while, Staples offered me another position. They fired me. And I was looking for a job, and Basho said, John, you want to be a trainer? And I was like, no. And they're like, why not? I'm like, I don't like trainers. And they said, well, why not? And I said, but because most sales trainers I had come across up until that point in my career were either failed sales professionals or professional presenters. And I didn't want to be that, right? And so they said, don't worry, you have to use these techniques to sell so you can train, so you can get paid. I was like, all right, I like the whole practice what you preach thing. And so jumped on board, took on some bigger accounts, brought on some bigger ones. And then make a very long story short, they screwed it up and I took it over. So now I'm doing my own little thing. Been on my own now for about 12 years, doing sales training for companies like Salesforce, LinkedIn, Box, Dropbox, Okta, pretty much all the SaaS companies that are on that list that you put up there. I've trained pretty much 75, 80% of them. And now I got a team of 15 people doing some real fun stuff. So
I love it. It's awesome. Well, I want to talk a little bit about what inspired your book, right? Because I wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales, but it's a little bit different audience. I mean, actually, the funny thing is like I think that they both kind of tackle a similar topic, which is helping democratize or like make clear to people who are not sure what sales is all about, what it is. In my case, the audience is like founders and first-time sellers, product managers, engineers, designers, like whatever, people who like, haven't gone through the apprenticeship process of where most people learn sales. And your audience is like kids, which is like super. It's like maybe you can kind of tell people a little bit about like what inspired it and what the process was like to make it.
Absolutely. So, going back to like why and values and all that stuff, one of my why, my why is to elevate the people and profession of sales, right? Because I genuinely believe that sales, when done right, it's the greatest profession in the world. When done wrong, it's one of the worst. And
Right.
To your point, writing a book, a lot of people have asked me, Johnny, when are you going to write a book? I'm like, what am I going to write that hasn't been written? First of all, I don't read very much. I mean, I told you I'm a state school kid that drank my way through 4 years of college here. I've probably read like 5 or 6 books in my life. So I feel like I'd kind of be a hypocrite if I wrote a book. The other one is like, what the hell am I going to write that hasn't already been written before? And so one of the things, for the past 10 years up until COVID, I was traveling every single week. I was a weekend dad, unfortunately. And I was really,
I think a lot of folks can probably empathize with that.
Yeah. And it didn't feel great. And we could get back to that later, but I was trying to find a way to connect with my daughter a little bit. She was 5, 6 years old. And I was, when you tell your kid you're a doctor, a lawyer, or anything like that, they kind of know what that is because they see it on TV and everything else.
It's on TV.
When you tell your kid you're in sales, they kind of look at you like, well, what is, do you just talk to people all day long? It's like, well, yes, but
yes, it's more than that. It's way more complicated than that. But like, you're not wrong.
So I said, well, how can I do something with her that gets me connected to her, helps her understand, and also adds some value to the overarching, community here? And one of the things she did, she came to me and she said, this is the evolution of how we got to the book. She was selling Girl Scout cookies when she was 6. And so she came to me and she goes, Daddy, I have this link here that you can share with your audience and people can buy from me online. Could you do that for me? And I was like, no. And she's like, why not? I was like, well, first of all, A, that's my audience and I work my ass off to build it. B, why would they buy cookies from you compared to everybody else that's hitting them up for cookies, right? And she's like, well, what do I need to do? I was like, well, you need to tell them why. You need to give them a pitch, right? So we practiced this little pitch. And if you go to iwanttobeInSalesWhenIGrowUp.com, you'll see her little video of like, she got a big afro on because she was nervous. So she dressed up a little bit.
Amazing.
And she pitched her cookies about why she likes the lemonades and all that other stuff. And then I wrote a blog about it. Fast forward next year. So she was the #1 in our town, by the way, for selling Girl Scout cookies. Fast forward the second year.
Making it rain.
Right. We were going door to door. So we practiced objection handling, right? That type of, and I wrote a blog about that. And then that evolved into this book that we wrote together. And the whole premise of the book is just, at its essence, what sales is. And the idea here is like one of the first pages in the book is the kid has to write a book report on a career. And they pick a name out of a hat. And my daughter, Charlotte, she picks out sales. And she's like, oh, what is this? And she's like, well, Daddy, I don't even know what to write about when she comes home. And I said, well, look, she's like, what is sales? And my point is, and I'm holding a butter dish in the book. And I say, see this butter dish? Somebody had to sell somebody the materials to be able to make this butter dish. And
Right.
then whoever made that butter dish had to sell it to the company who was going to be able to put it on the shelf at the store for us to then be able to buy it, so that they could sell it to us, so that right now I don't have butter dripping all over my hands. I can put it in a butter dish. So if you literally think about it, every single thing that is around us is sales.
Mhm.
And it's just so then we go through and like the principles of it and everything else. It was just a fun project. And so the three main reasons: one is to introduce it to kids, because no kid ever says I want to be in sales when I grow up.
Yeah.
I want to change that. The other thing is to get more women into sales, because I think women are some of the best sales professionals I've ever come across, and that's why it's based on my daughter and a female character. And then the third is we don't make any money, so it all goes to charity. And so 100% of the profits. My daughter actually does not want to be in sales when she grows up. She actually wants to be a veterinarian. So all the money goes to a World Wildlife Fund, and every year we get to write a nice little check for about $25,000 to the World Wildlife Fund, which is pretty cool.
I love it. But even when she's like, running her own veterinarian practice, she's like certainly going to have to, sell people to come like, give business to her practice. And of course, recruit other veterinarians to work for her and so on and so forth. This is actually one of the things that I talk about in founding sales is like, it's a little geekier than what I really appreciate, the butter dish analogy there. But salespeople are the grease that makes the economy actually work, and that's that's essentially what you were describing right there. Right? Is like, and especially in like high technology sales, is like as a founder of Atrium and a software entrepreneur, like the way that like new tech, like you can observe a problem in the market and like come up with great technology in order to like solve that problem, but like if you're not able to like connect to the buyer, like cross that last mile, like it didn't matter, right? Like it didn't matter.
Most of the companies I've seen fail has nothing to do with product market fit. It doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the product they put out there. It has everything to do with the fact that they can't sell it. And that's why I wrote a blog post a while ago called The Founder's Dilemma, which is that engineering founder that comes up with a really, really good idea and then talks to their friends, families, and fools about it when they first come up with it. And you and I both know, Pete, that and I've said, somebody told me this early in my career, that sales is the transfer of enthusiasm, right? So if I'm an engineer and I come up with a product and I'm telling it to kind of my ecosystem of friendly people, I'm very passionate about it. So people are going to want to buy it, right? And so then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, shit, this is easy. Everybody needs this. So let me just hire a VP of sales and go, right? And without any structure, without the same passion or any of that stuff, VPs of sales put in that position typically fail pretty hard. And then engineers validates, oh, sales, I knew sales sucks. Like, so let's go marketing. And then they go all in on marketing. And then, then they eventually smash into that wall again where they have to sell. So if sales is unfortunately, if sales is thought of as a necessary evil in an organization, most of those organizations fail. Yeah.
This is why like I'm so pumped on. So I'm Founding Sales, the book I wrote, is like it's a little bit more of a textbook. And people tell me all this all the time. They're like, this is not really a page turner. It's more like it's like a manual that you use over time. I'm like, yeah. I mean, like I think it's actually I have a little bit of a regret around that, because I think there's a lot to be said around like page turners, right? So like one of my favorite sales management books is written by Corey Bray. It's called 5 Secrets of the Sales Coach, and it's written as a narrative. And I want to be a salesperson. I want to be in sales when I grow up is written as a story. But what's amazing about it is it's got like all the different like little parts, right? Like it's got BANT qualification in it, right? Like, oh, hey, should we be selling the cookies? Because I think if I recall correctly, it's like the protagonist is like, selling cookies. I think it wasn't Girl Scout cookies. She made her own cookies. I couldn't
use Girl Scout, right?
Right. She made her, she made, but it was phenomenal, right? Like she made her own cookies and like, oh, let's sell them to kids. Oh, do kids have money? Oh, I guess kids don't have money. Right. And then it was like, hey, let's go around and let's like sell these cookies, and we're going door to door, but we're doing it before dinner. And so the parents are like, yeah, like we're not eating cookies right now. And that was like a timeline thing, right? Where it was like, hey, and like, oh, well, maybe what we could do is we could engage with these folks at a compelling event
Yep.
time, which is
Mhm.
like right after dinner, like, oh, you know what, that's funny that you should
Yeah.
be here because we forgot dessert. And
Yeah.
of course, like these things, like you're like, oh cool, like it's so kiddie, but like I think
Mhm.
these things are really important, right? Like
Definitely.
oftentimes, like you talk to investors or when you're evaluating a sales motion, like having a good compelling event is like a really important thing, because especially with like, there's lots of problems that exist in the world, but like how are you going to get your problem at the top when the person has that like white hot need? And so I just
Yep.
thought that like the way that it was described throughout the book just made it like so accessible, not just to a kid, but also to like,
Yeah.
like a junior AE or something who's like,
Yeah.
like, man, I guess I never really thought about the importance of like timeline, or I never thought about like the importance of like, actual budget, and like, the difference between like line item budget versus like, there's like money up in the kitty somewhere.
Yeah.
How yeah, anyway, I just think it's like absolutely fantastic. Have you and I also imagine it's really great for parents to explain it, like, to their kids as well, and put a little feather in their cap there. um and we're sending copies to everybody who joins the event today. Are you
Thank
going to
you.
write any other books? There's gonna be a sequel?
Actually, yeah.
Really?
I'm working on it right now. It's not a kid's book though. It's the next
Darn.
level up. It's for high school kids.
Oh,
And
perfect.
working title is This is Sales.
Like it.
And I'm going to define it's for that kid in high school that is sitting there
Mhm.
looking at college going, wait, do I really need to go into $200,000-$300,000 worth of debt right
Oh, I
now to get
like
a
this.
job I might not like? Or that kid who's in college halfway through and realized the major is pretty crap. And so maybe sales, and
Yep.
really just outlining like a little brief history on sales, what the mentality needs to be, what the options
Mhm.
are. And hopefully there'll be a lot of stuff, to your point, that even
Mhm.
seasoned sales professionals can get something out of, because I believe that a lot of sales is about the fundamentals and just doing them pretty, consistently. And if you're consistent with the fundamentals, you usually win over most. And
Yeah.
so that's what I'm going to be focusing on as far as mentality and everything else, because
I love it.
this is a profession that opens up so many doors, and it's the ultimate
Yeah.
equalizer too, as far as, if you're talking diversity or if you're talking any of that stuff.
Yep.
There's no barrier to entry. You work hard, you get paid more. You know what I mean? So there's not like,
Yeah.
oh, women get paid 17% less than men, that
Mhm.
type of stuff. It's commission. It's like, here's your fucking base salary, go get it.
Yep.
And so I just believe that. I also kind of think that college is a scam these days. Like the traditional 4-year college
Mhm.
university right now, I think, is just such a bag of crap. Unless you know what you want to do, unless you are
Mhm.
crystal clear at 18 years old and who the hell is about what
Right.
you want to do. College undergrad is a good social education. It's not an actual education. And to go $300,000 into debt to get a $40,000 a year job that you're gonna have to be paying back for the rest of your life, to me, is just asinine right now. There's just so many other options.
Seems less than ideal. Yeah,
Yeah.
um yeah, that, I mean, I'm super excited about that. Then we'll just have to do another one of these events when the book ships. Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to change gears a little bit and talk about that like sales fundamentals thing,
Mhm.
because yeah, like I feel that a lot of at least in technology, like the technology industry, and kind of like what we would call like the modern sales kind of like world, there's a lot of cool stuff that we have going. Like I mean, we're responsible for this
Yeah.
as well. Like, we make, software that helps like sales organizations instrument their teams,
Yeah.
and, like, have analytics around the quantity and quality of selling that's going on. And of course, there's like all these great like automation tools and so on and so forth. And um, but I wonder to what extent that like kind of like misses the point around like just the actual fundamentals. Like it's one actually Richard Harris has like a funny phrase around this, around like what he calls like accelerating the suck.
Mm, yeah.
And you see this a lot when like I mean I buy a lot of software, weird, and I get on these like sales calls, and like there's no agenda, like there's
Yeah.
obviously like no pre-call planning has happened,
Yeah.
because they're just like, hey, how's the weather there? And I'm just like, oh my
Exactly.
god, like this
Yeah.
call already sucks ass. Like
Mhm.
I'm like there's obviously no pre-call planning. You didn't come in with a plan for rapidly building rapport. You didn't set an agenda. You didn't check time. You didn't do an upfront contract. You didn't kind of like cover the things that we were gonna expect to talk about, and you didn't confirm mutuality with me. And like instead, it's just like, and so I don't get mad at the 26-year-old rep or the 28-year-old rep, but I kind of like think about it. And I'm like, man, like, but this person probably has like, $150 worth of Salesforce and like $100 worth of like chorus and gong and like $80 of this and and like literally is not doing like an agenda set there. So where do you think that's like coming from? Is it just because like people don't go through like Xerox or IBM training anymore, or like what's the deal, you think?
I think it's just a never-ending, especially in our space with the VCs and all that other stuff, a never-ending desire to optimize absolutely everything and grow at all costs and scale at all costs. And that with that mentality that we're in right now, and look, I've made my living off of the SaaS industry. I've made my living off of VCs throwing money at companies and telling them to hire 700 people over the course of 2 months and go. And, them betting that 1 out of their 10 investments is actually going to pop type of stuff. That's just such an unhealthy environment though, from a sales development standpoint. And I don't mean SDRs. I just mean sales development.
Yeah. Like developing skills, like building muscles.
So Nikki Ivy, who just came on board here, it was funny because she's been in a bunch of roles, and our ramp here at JB Sales as a trainer is a year. I'll give you a year to ramp because you have to be an SDR, a BDR, an AE, a CS, and a trainer. You have to be all 5 roles in one. And she's like, she's 2 months in and she's all antsy about getting going. She's like, I gotta. I'm like, no, calm down. Don't worry. I expect 0 results from you in the first 6 months. After 6 months, I'm going to start to, we need to see some traction here because I'm not a VC. I still own 100% of the company. I'm self-funded. I don't owe anybody anything. So I can do this, quote unquote, in my opinion, the right way. But when you take this 22-year-old kid out of school and you throw them into a company that has okay training, maybe on some soft skills, but they try to force the efficiency with these tools, the reps get caught up in the tool. They don't get caught up in the profession. Yeah. And I call it the give a shit factor. And Morgan, well, this is
we talk about that in our organization all the time. Like give it like high level of give a shit. That's literally a term we use in Atrium. That person has a high level of give a shit.
That's literally one of our core values is give a shit, right? Nice. So
right.
And this came from like Morgan, when Morgan worked for me, when he first came on board with me, he was doing really good and we had created cadences and all this stuff. And as much as I love that tool, all those tools, I hate them when used the wrong way. And most of them use them the wrong way. Yeah. And so they use them as spam engines, right? So Morgan, we worked on his messaging and he was getting pretty good results, but then all of a sudden they plateaued. And he came to me after a while and he goes, John, I'm a little concerned. He's like, I feel like I'm doing all the right stuff here, but yet my results aren't changing. He's like, how's gonna, what's going on? And right. And I was like, well, Morgan, I go, look, your results aren't going to change until one thing does. And he said, what's that? I said, until you start giving a shit. And he goes, what? And I was like, look, I understand you give a shit about working here. I understand you give a shit about your job, but until you start genuinely caring about the other person on the other end of that phone or the other person on the end of that email as a person, as somebody who gets up in the morning, has challenges, probably has a family, dealing with COVID, has a boss who's yelling at them, has 50 other people, like until you start thinking of them that way, your results aren't going to change. And so I think I think the problem isn't the rep. The problem is our management and leadership, and I go all the way up to the VCs when I talk about leadership, pushing this agenda down on these kids to ramp in 3 months. And if you don't ramp in 3 months, you're fired. And if you're not hitting your quota in this, you're fired. And if you don't hit and we're dumping them in, we stuff them full of product knowledge for the first 2 to 3 weeks that they come on board. Then we teach them all these quote unquote 700 tools that they're going to use. And there's really no sales or business acumen introduced in this. Right. And if I was, the way I do it now is if I'm hiring a kid out of school, like a 22, the first month has nothing to do with sales. It has everything to do with business acumen. You want to accelerate a kid's ability to sell. Teach them the language of business. Have them meet with CEOs that are your existing customers and ask questions about what CEOs go through. Have in conversations with customers on CTOs and CFOs and that type of stuff so they understand what a day in the life looks like. Have them research these people and ask thoughtful questions. And then teach them enough about the product, not all of it, enough to be dangerous and to get into a good conversation, and then teach them the technology. But I want to rip all the technology out first, and I want to give them spreadsheets, Google Docs, and fucking like, whatever, and just say, no, you don't get anything until you earn it. And you earn it by giving a shit and showing that you care about these people, showing that you can do the research on your own. Because that's why, like, we were just having this conversation about LinkedIn. I just found out I was a member 36,541 on LinkedIn.
There you go.
Super early adopter, right?
Right.
And people were like, well, Jesus, John, you got 400,000 followers and all this. Like, how'd that happen? Well, I inherently knew before LinkedIn came out, I was at every networking event I could possibly go to. I was at every networking group. So I inherently knew the value of developing relationships and networking. So when LinkedIn came out, I was like, ooh, I know how to do that. And now I can do it a lot more efficiently.
This seems like I can do it at distance.
So instead, if you had given me LinkedIn early in my career, I would have been like, oh, look at this great tool. And I'm going to spam a bunch of people to see if I can get a connection.
Right.
But because I met you, Pete, and I shook your hand and I had a conversation with you and I learned what it was like to develop rapport and really have a meaningful relationship. When LinkedIn came out, it was really easy for me to leverage LinkedIn to get to where I wanted to be.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think that I love the thing about you guys' ramp there, because I think I used to be it doesn't look it now, but like, I was a competitive athlete for a long time in high school and also college. I'm a big sports fan. Oh, look at your Pats mug. Sorry about Monday.
No, we're in so much trouble.
But yeah, like I really harken back to the idea of like, you really have to take the time to like teach people the plays,
fundamentals,
and the fundamentals, and not just like teach it to them, and like that takes time, but also like do the repetitions as well, which I think like for whatever reason people I don't know like where this comes from, because like I grew up playing baseball, and I was a pitcher and an infielder, and like my goodness, like the amount of batting practice we took and the amount of bullpens that I threw, right, and the amount of ground balls that you take, and you practice such that when you get in the game, like you don't kick the ball, like exactly. And so like for whatever reason, it just like seems that mindset doesn't really kind of permeate into
it's not sexy.
Yeah, it's really not. It doesn't somehow it doesn't permeate into the professional world. Like, and I get that, I empathize with the frustrations around like, hey, we got to get on the follow, we got to do some calls here or whatever. But I guess the problem is like, all right, like let's have a bunch of shitty calls, right? Like, all right, cool, like let's run a bunch of meetings or run a bunch of ops, and like with the 0% win rate sounds rad to me, right? No, right? Like sounds like a phenomenal way of like pissing away a bunch of marketing expense. And so I think like being intentional about onboarding. One of our investors is a gentleman named Mike Marg. He wrote a great blog post on his Substack about like structured onboarding in the in sales. And it really just starts, and kind of like what you were noting earlier, like it doesn't start with a product, right? It starts with personas and like their pain points, which essentially is business empathy, right? Like this person's day in the life looks like this, and this is why, like these are their frustrations, and so on and so forth. And then like so if you start with that, and then run, like make people do the repetitions. I'm like, I had this a couple of times with some of my reps recently. Like we don't have an LMS system, because like we have like 12 reps, right? And so we have all the kind of our training recorded in different Google Docs and what have you. And so what I do is like we do the training, and there's like video recording. Like I've had chorus come and like sit on the training, so like we have recordings of it. But then there's like the homework part where it's like, cool, you're gonna go do this talk track, like you're gonna go do this pitch, and you're gonna do it 10 times. And you're not gonna tell me that you're gonna do it 10 times. You're actually gonna record yourself doing it 10 times. So like we use this software called Cloud App for like taking screenshots and recording things. So you're gonna record yourself doing it 10 times, and it's like, oh man, that sounds like kind of a and it's like people procrastinate. And then the funny thing is like you go and you watch like pitch one, and then like it gets better and better and better and better and better and better, because it's just like, running the, the out, like the go
Yep.
route, or like, whatever play that you're running. It turns out like after you do it, like you probably suck at it like for the first like 1, 2, or 3 times, then you get a little bit better at it 4, 5, 6, and then you start getting really good at it in 7, 8, and then like 9 and 10, like you're actually, taking care of business. And I think that like doing those repetitions is something that, and then like having Gong record you doing a shitty sales call because you never did those things, like, man, I'm so glad I have this advanced software recording me like doing a terrible job here, because I like, yeah, exactly, because I didn't like, okay, cool, the AI has identified XYZ, versus like, well, that's because you just never gotten your 3-point stance to begin with.
Can I give a very tactical takeaway for the group here about how to kind of bridge this gap for those of us that have already kind of, unfortunately, like our onboarding is what it is. This is a way to connect sales, marketing, and CS all at the same time. And I recommend everybody do this once a month. All right. 2 hours, put a meeting on the calendar, 2 hours once a month, the first Monday of every month. Go get 3 clients who have the persona that you want to sell to that month. So call it CIOs in healthcare. So go get 3 CIOs in healthcare from your existing client list. Give them some benefits for it, for whatever it is, buy them lunch. Have them come up on a session like this, and then do a Q&A session with the sales leader leading it, and ask all the questions you would ask. Hey, what's a day in a life look like? What were you doing before us? Now, what are you doing after us? What's the real value of our solution? Hey, what's your life now in COVID, and what was it before COVID? Like all this stuff. And then, oh, by the way, what mediums do you respond to? Email, video, cell, like what's the best? So now you do that for an hour. You have a Q&A, and then you do another hour right after that where the team collaborates on what they learned, and they do a little bit of research on that persona. And then the teams, say there's like 5 people, say there's 20 reps on the team, break the teams up into 4 people each, right? So 5 groups of 4. Now, each group creates a sequence or a cadence for that persona based on what they learned, right? Then, and if you get a customer advisory board, take that messaging, give it back to those clients and say,
this land,
hey,
what do you think?
What do you think of this, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Now you get it blessed, then execute. So now everybody runs a list of 20 or 30 accounts that fit that persona, and everybody fires off. So group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. Touch 5 ends up being a call. That means it's a call blitz. So everybody's calling into the same persona with the same type of message. And at the end, you look at the data. You do that once a month. You pick a new persona every month, and you do that. You will add business acumen, you will add learning, you will add results, and you will figure out what works and what doesn't work for your exact persona, and you will include your customers with you. So if there's nothing else that people do outside of revamping their own onboarding or anything like that, just do that, because you can have your SDRs, your BDRs, your AEs, your CSMs, your marketing team all together.
Yeah, it's like, I think this is something that oftentimes organizations, like, they try to like boil the ocean. They're like, oh man, like we're so behind the 8 ball. We got to revamp our whole thing, versus just like, hey, just like add a little feature. Like, and then I also like what you're describing right there. One of the things that we talk about here at Atrium was we have this internal phrase that we call calendar is destiny. Right. And so like, whatever you have on your calendar is like probably going to happen. Obviously, sales meetings are a great example of that. But like ideally, you're like not missing those sales meetings. But we do the same thing around like with your little pre-call planning block and your little follow-up block, because if you're back to back, it's gonna be a mess. And so you do the same stuff with like enablement and training as well. So like we have a recurring enablement hour. It's on Monday. It's at from 4 to 5 p.m. because like we're on the West Coast. Like business pretty shut down at that point. And then moreover, I was talking with our VP of sales. We have the phenomenal Melina Call. She's a former sales lofter. I'm sure you probably have met her at a Rainmaker or Sales Love or whatever. And so we were talking about this today around like having a recurring cadence. Like we're not only do we have that session because there's space on the calendar, but then what we have is like we have our programs that are coming down the pike, right? So we have our little fancy pants Google sheet there. We're like, hey, this is the program that we're doing right now. Like right now we're doing like a refresh on upfront contracts. And then the next program that we're going to execute is like competitive messaging. And like, like we have the session and then there's like some homework associated with it. There's like accountability that happens throughout the week. There's lots of celebration. And then we come back again. And like, so now what you've got is you've got a system. Like, is it a whole revamp or whatever? It's like, no. We're just creating space for that to happen.
Exactly.
So I love what you're describing right there. I want to change gears a little bit here and kind of ask you, because like it's like related to, it's like a related topic to the fundamentals thing,
Yeah.
right? Where the other thing too with like doing fundamentals is like you don't get good at them until you do them a lot.
Yeah.
Like a
1,000
lot,
hours, whatever.
yeah,
You know.
like a lot. And I talk
Yeah.
with this about my reps all the time. People are like, man, Pete, like you can talk to anyone. It's
Yep.
crazy. Like you just got like go into a bar, like a party, and like work the room and come out with like 20 new friends. Like that's crazy. And I'm just like, you're so good at it. That I'm like, yeah, it's not like it was just like natural, right? It's
No.
like I've done so many push-ups on this thing and just I'm continually doing it. And so part of that actually comes from just like putting in the calories and the work.
Yeah.
And like, you know, having 15, 20 customer facing meetings a week for like 2 years, like it'll get you pretty good at like, cementing rapport pretty quickly.
Yep.
And I think that kind of like flies in the face a little bit of like early in your career. That's like the place to really, really buckle down and get good at these things. But that oftentimes means like putting in the calories and like, we see this like with like our high performing SDRs or high performing AEs, like, you see them like they're doing customer facing stuff during the day. And then at night, they're like, doing like CRM updates or they're setting up their next day or whatever. And some people might say like, oh man, that's like, really, that's really egregious or whatever. I'm like, but these guys like want to grind. They want to be a VP of sales when they grow up.
Yep.
And like, that doesn't just happen naturally.
Nope.
I mean, I know you have opinions on kind of like work-life balance and things like that. I'd love to kind of hear your take on it.
Well, actually, James mentioned this, and this is a good segue. John mentioned earlier, desire. If you don't love that, have that want to do the profession, you will not succeed. And it goes back to that give a shit factor, right? The work-life balance piece. I actually think work-life balance is a false narrative. People who talk about, my opinion here, people have very strong opinions otherwise, but mine is, by talking to me about your work-life balance, what you're telling me is that you work and then you live. And if you break what we do in generalities, right? We sleep, we work, we live. So you sleep about a third of your life. You work at least a third of your life. So with this mentality, that tells me that you only live a third of your life. To me, that's a very sad thing. Okay.
Sure.
So I talk a lot more about work-life integration. Like, and it stems from believing in what you do. Like if you believe in what you do, if you are passionate about what you do, then it's not really work. I mean, it is, yes, of course. Like, but
there's always parts that suck, right? Like I had a really dynamic sales call, and now I gotta log the notes and like update all the fields. But you gotta.
But yeah, and so I think that's why I think sales, I tell reps all the time, if you don't believe in what you do, man, please go find something else to do. Because if you're in sales and you're just in it for a commission check, then you're the one giving the rest of us a bad name. You're the one out there. You're the Glenn Ross. You're the Wolf of Wall Street. You're the boiler room asshole who's just stuffing stuff down people's throats with no give a shit factor. But if you care, then you want to learn, you want to get better, you want to, all that stuff, right? So I think that's where it stems from. And then you can really talk about that work-life integration, because now it's just an ebb and a flow. You know what I mean? Now it's like, okay, well, if I want to take a break because I want to take lunch with my daughter, I'm going to take lunch with my daughter, but I'm going to work until midnight tonight because I'm fired up, I'm passionate about it, or I know I need to do this thing. And I'll give a construct here for people to think of too, that helps with this, which is we do a lot of busy work. Okay. And I've done a lot of research and thought around the whole concept of energy management, right?
Yes.
And a lot of people talk about energy management as far as like what times a day you do certain things. That's way beyond my brain capacity. But I look at it as stuff that gives you energy versus things that take energy away from you. So Pete, you know it as well as I do. There's people that you talk to, okay, that when you walk out of that conversation, you are energized with that. Like you're like, oh my God, that
Kyle Porter.
Right? Exactly. Kyle Porter or Larry Long Jr. Larry Long Jr. If you have never talked to Larry Long Jr., you have to talk to this man. If you're ever having a bad day, look at Larry Long Jr. You cannot walk away from that conversation not feeling like you're going to tackle the world, right? So, but then there's other people that you walk away that you have a conversation and it literally just drains everything about you, right? So I have this quadrant that I do, and on the x-axis is stuff that helps you achieve your priorities and stuff that does not help you achieve your goals or priorities, right? And then on the y-axis is stuff that gives you energy and stuff that takes energy away from you. Sure. And a very simple exercise to go through is to literally write down brainstorm everything you're doing right now. And I'm talking about all the activities,
all the stuff,
everything, and put friends, family, people, all that stuff in there, right? And then take everything and put it in one of those buckets. And the idea
Yeah.
is the stuff that gives you energy and helps you achieve your goals, literally go all in at. And that's the work-life balance piece of that, which is like, I fucking love doing this and it helps me achieve my goals. The stuff that does not, that helps you achieve your goals, but does not give you energy, you'd said earlier, like admin stuff, that's either outsource Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week or eat the frog, right? Just bucket it and suck
Calendared,
it up. Right?
calendared. Yeah, it's like pipe gen Tuesdays, right? Like, oh man, I know I should be doing pipe gen. It's just like cool, but you're gonna kick the can down the road. You're gonna kick the can down the road. I think that was
Just do it.
popularized at like MongoDB. Was just like, you know what? Sorry, no excuses. Tuesdays are for pipe gen, right? And like you're gonna be doing prospecting, and then we have this like a lot of our customers because like AE prospecting ends up being like a key initiative that folks are like, yeah, we got to get our AEs like prospecting more. They got to do, we want them to contribute 20% of their pipeline, et cetera, et cetera. And we're like, and that'll be like one of the initial reasons why they purchase Atrium, because they want to instrument that and set goals around it. And then, but then the funny thing is like, you gotta like set the goals around like, hey, we want to see this many opportunities coming out. We want to see this many new accounts being engaged. We want to see this email activity or calling activity. So then you can actually declare that. But the funny thing is like, even if you do, like you have fancy pants software that's going to instrument that and tell you whether or not it's happening or not, you still have to put the time on the calendar to do it. Because otherwise what ends up happening is you see like everyone does it in like a flurry on like Friday, or they do it on a flurry at like the 30th of the month. And it's like, that's not effective prospecting. That's not effective pipe management. So yeah, put it on the calendar, and eating the frog is a really key thing.
The stuff that gives you energy but that does not help you achieve your goals, those are things like, like hobbies, right? Like travel, whatever it is. Those are important. But the stuff, if you want time back in your life, everything that fits in the box of does not help you achieve your goals and does not give you energy, literally cut it off and throw it away. And unfortunately, I mean that with friends, family, and everybody else. Right. So if you marry that energy management where you focus on the stuff that you love and you are very clear on your why and your core values, work-life balance just happens. It just does. Because when you are clear on your why, and that's the Simon Sinek why and your core values and I call it your decision stack, with that, and you know why you do what you do every day or where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish, and then you focus your energy in the right places, man. I still work until 2-3 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? I still stay up and do stuff because I know it's helping me get to where I want to go, and I actually enjoy doing it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you can do when you're thinking about helping your it's kind of like related to this this notion of energy management is doing the things at the appropriate time to kind of like I think you talked about it earlier, like eat the frog, do it at the beginning of the day, or like make sure it's calendared or whatever it is. This is the thing that we talk about all the time with our team is like, hey, you got a sales call. Great. You got to have the pre-call planning block. You got to have the follow-up block, because if you don't have if you don't have the pre-call planning block and you're running in from another call, you're probably not going to do a good job of pre-call planning. You're not going to get yourself set. As a result, you're going to the first 5 minutes of your call, like the first 5 minutes, the first 90 seconds of a call set up like what the rest of the 29 minutes are going to look like. Cool. And then if the time isn't blocked at the end, you're not going to yeah, I'll do all the CRM admin at the end of the day. Not right. So doing that, and then but also being mindful with yourself around the things that do give you energy. And that's this, as a manager, that can mean giving people things that they're good at, right? So if you have a rep who's particularly good at coaching other folks, or you have a rep who wants to do management at some later juncture, or maybe you have we have a rep who's this gentleman named Max, who's he's really good at talk tracks, really good at turns of phrase. I keep joking with him. I'm you're a product marketer hidden in a sales rep's in an AE's body. Hey, I want you to refactor these talk tracks right here, or I want you to, whatever it is. And then what they can do is they can slot that into different kind of points in time. And one of the things I kind of call it is productive procrastination. It's not procrastination, but it's more re-energizing yourself with something that helps you move the ball forward.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's not the top thing, but it's maybe it's number 4 or whatever. But the important thing is it stokes you up, and then you're ready to eat another frog.
Yep.
Right. I think that's a really important thing to do there. So another kind of topic I wanted to touch on, and I think you were mentioning this earlier with Morgan, and we were kind of talking about this as relates to like being careful about how like modern technology layered on top of like poor fundamentals just like accelerates the suck, or it's
Yep.
just worst case scenario it's accelerating the suck. Best case scenario it's just like a waste of a waste of money.
Mhm.
One of the things that you kind of talk about is how like the predictable revenue model is kind of borked. Maybe what you can do is you can give people a little bit of context of like what what the predictable revenue model is, because people might not be familiar with the book, because I think it's like 20 years old at this
It's
point.
about 15. Yeah, it's about 15, 20
Yeah,
years old at this
yeah,
point.
something like that. Maybe you can give
So
people like a little context on that, and how you think that it's like kind of gotten long in the tooth.
yeah, I mean, look, this is the way the whole SaaS industry is built, right? Salesforce created, they put pen to paper on it.
Yeah, exactly.
And what predictable revenue, all it is the segmentation of roles. So it used to be, it was a full cycle sales. You had to do prospecting, meeting and closing. Then predictable revenue came along and segmented the roles. You got SDRs inbound, BDRs outbound, AEs closers, and then CS over there, right?
Yep.
And that is a phenomenal model for us as organizations to scale, because you can theoretically bring in relatively cheap talent right out of school. You grind them all the way through. They become your AEs, and you can grow your org, and you can scale really, really quickly with that approach. And Salesforce is the poster child for it. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
The problem with it is about as far from customer centric as you can possibly get.
Yeah.
Who the hell wants to be handed off 15 times before they actually talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about, right? I mean, does any executive out there really want to get a call from an SDR asking them piece of shit bant questions that they can't ever even give them any context of what's really going on? And so I'm kind of interested. Hey, you kind of hooked me here with a little pitch here. What's this all about? Oh, I can't talk to you. I got to flip you over to my AE, and my AE is then going to ask the same fucking questions that my SDR just asked, and then they're going to drone through some piece of shit demo without even asking me any questions, and then I'm going to ask a technical question, and then they're going to say, oh, sorry, I can't answer that question. Let me bring my engineer in here. And then later on, I got to bring my executive in to be able to, like, you're talking 700 steps before you actually get to a point where I understand what this thing is. And if you talk about frictionless sales and the consumerization of sales, the B2C versus the B2B, and the Amazoning of the sales process, that model is crap at this point. Okay. I know we're in it and I get it. And again, I've built my career off of this model, but it is blatantly obvious what the market is saying to us. They hate that approach. I think 86% of people say they don't even want to engage with a sales prep. I think Corporate Executive Board came out with the stat. It was like 86% of people don't even want to engage with a sales professional as any part of the sales process. Wow. And so because we've stuffed them through this linear sales, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. And that's not how people buy. They want to ebb and flow. They want to have a conversation with somebody. They want to be educated. They want to be, all that. They want value at every single interaction. And our model is just not set up that way. So because I know we're coming up on time, my push right now is I beg people, again, going back to, you're not going to revamp this. We have tons of SDRs. We have tons of BDRs. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the separation is powerful and valuable. How can we make it, like, how can we make the juice worth the squeeze? How we can make it like not a sucky from a customer standpoint?
Well, first of all, I think we're going full blown back to full cycle sales, with truly supported by true ABM and true AI that surfaces up real insights for the full cycle sales rep to take back over. That's where I think we're headed back to. I do think that currently, as it states right now, SDRs and BDRs are going to continue to move further and further over to marketing and ops, and they're going to be salaried positions, and they're going to be mostly data analysts, basically using all these tools to engage with people and look at insights, and then fork over to the AEs and maybe do some pod scenario. Okay. But a great transition for this. Tim over at Elation, I did a podcast on this. They actually have an awesome model. It blew my mind. It's SDR to AM. Account manager. So the deal is here. So when you take an SDR, that's this part of the sales process, most companies, the only way the predictable revenue model works is if you're big enough, like a Salesforce, where you have SMB, mid-market, and enterprise. So an SDR can be promoted to an AE, SMB. And then they start at the so it's kind of no harm, no foul. Like you're closing, but it's kind of shitty little clients. Who cares? And then you graduate up to the enterprise. Most companies aren't that big to be able to support that model. So you take an SDR after 2 years, 23 years old, and then you fork them over to a mid-market or an enterprise AE. Like, are you shitting me right now?
Yeah.
So like they're going to fail. That's where you see the fail. So instead, you take that SDR, cut them to, because look, as much as cold calling's crap right now and it doesn't produce a ton of results, it's still, I think, an extremely important part of the overarching contact strategy and a sales rep's development. Because it is, you need to get your ass kicked for a couple of years to see if you're going to be able to handle this profession. Okay. So I think it's critically important as part of the overall marketing strategy and development of a sales rep. But after they show the give a shit factor and they can do the activities, then you put them over to CS or AM. Right. Now they're responsible for closing, but it's upsells, cross sells, and renewals.
Like so lower risk. Yeah, and they learn a lot of the product and so on.
The product, they learn the use cases, they get stories for days. Then they might stay there because they just like that. Or now they get promoted to an AE, and now they can close with confidence because now they're talking about, stories of an existing customer that implemented this, and they know that a sales rep closed them on this and it sucked here. So that's what I can't do that because I don't want to screw my customer service people again. That model right there, to me, is the transition out of this predictable revenue model back to full cycle sales.
Man, that's interesting. I totally see that. And we actually have a number, some of our, I think that makes a lot of sense because especially in a scenario where, we make, a new category of software called data-driven sales management, right? It's like there's like the legacy way of like measuring sales. It's like analytics, whatever, versus like very human-centric, it's almost kind of like sports analytics, right? Yep. And it's a new behavior, and it's like, it's kind of like Moneyball, right? We have a lot of people like, you can't measure that, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like the same, from the movie, right? And so your CS people actually one of the phrases we use is like, personal trainers, not waiters. It's not like, what would you like today, John? Right. It's more kind of like, hey, cool. So you bought because you wanted to get jacked. And so today we're working on abs, right? And like, we're going to make you sweat. And SDRs are really phenomenal at that. Like some of our top performing implementation staff were former SDRs, because you don't want to have a situation where like you're doing implementation and success and someone like, bails on a meeting with you and you're like, no, sorry, we're not canceling this, it's getting back on the calendar. Right? Like you're not running away from me. And I think what you're describing around like getting lots of like customer stories and being able one of the phrases that I like to use is our AEs, like they get very, very, very expert at data-driven sales management. So like we sell on customer data, like people set up an Atrium account and they're showing managers and leaders, information about their reps and their performance and what have you. But so like they become very expert at like the technicality of that, like, analyzing performance and so on and so forth. Where they are like weaker is what I call like backbone, right? Like you want to, I call it like installing backbone. And so a great way of installing backbone is saying like, hey, look, I've worked with 50 customer or 100 customers or whatever. And I know that you're like, throwing this objection at me right now, but like, you know what? Like, I know what good looks like because like I was the implementation person for like,
exactly.
40 sales managers at Gainsight. And like, you probably have heard of them before, right? A little sales organization. And like, their point of view is XYZ. So, why don't we do it my way? Right. And like as an AE, now you have that.
Yep, exactly. And to answer, Tracy had a question about pods. I'm a big believer in pods. Tracy, what I would add to the pod though, I would add marketing to the pod. My opinion, going back to ABM, real ABM is there's the marketing org, okay? And then there's the sales org. And unfortunately, both of those are two siloed individuals and they pretend like they play together. An easy way to connect the dots is go get a marketing admin, like a 22-year-old kid marketing admin person who sits on that pod and is the liaison to marketing. So they talk to marketing about exactly what your pod needs from an ABM standpoint with your customers. So if you have that liaison marketing admin person who sits in there, and again, this is a role that marketing person could go into ops, they could go into marketing, they could go into whatever. But you can almost get an SDR for marketing and put them on each one of those pods. And that's the connective tissue that rounds out the ABM. I will say, obviously, with all of this, it's, if you're selling enterprise, mid-market, or SMB, that doesn't really hold true for SMBs, pods, and all that other stuff. But if you're in the mid-market and enterprise, you can make that work. And I'm a big fan because they all learn from each other and they all have team members, all that stuff. But add the marketing piece to it, Tracy, if you can.
I love it. Well, given that we're coming up on time, any parting wisdom, closing thoughts for us, John?
Yeah, look, I think it's just, I've been on this tip of a while ago, which is, look, none of the rules apply anymore. COVID broke them all. And so stop doing what you're supposed to do. I'm just going to tell everybody out there, stop. I'm the biggest benefactor of predictable revenue, right? So for instance, like I've trained Salesforce. So I get all these SaaS companies that come to me and say, oh, you trained Salesforce. We need your training. I'm like, do you? Do you really? And they're like, well, yeah. And after like talking to them, I'm like, you don't really know. You actually need this first, and then you can do something. Like, well, no, we need your training. People do things because they think they're supposed to do them because that's the way things have been done. There's no rules anymore. So do whatever. Here's something to think about. Stop thinking about strategy. Start thinking about experiments.
Mm-hmm.
Here at JB at Sale Better by JB Sales, everything there's no more strategy. Everything's an experiment, and I empower everyone in the organization to experiment with everything. Put a beginning and an end to it. Come up with a hypothesis. As long as it aligns with what we're trying to accomplish, fucking do it. And if you fail, we're going to celebrate that shit, because fail fast and go. Right now, you have to keep moving right now. If you are waiting for things to go back to normal, if you're just waiting on your big plan strategy you're getting smoked right now. So treat everything as an experiment and stop doing what you're supposed to do.
Nice. I love it. Good parting notes. All right. Well, you have a great rest of your day, John. Elliot, is there anything else we need to cover, man?
No, just gonna wrap things up right now. First of all, do want to thank everyone for attending. Always love having you guys here. Want to say a big thank you to our wonderful sponsor, Atrium, doing great things. Link to the website is in the chat. Make sure to check them out. Thank you to Pete and John for providing the content. Recordings and key takeaways will be available on our page shortly. Also, don't forget to check out our upcoming events.